Um, I'm going to be starting now, and welcome, guys, to the final for what annual book club meeting. Today, we're discussing Yaari and by Loiter. I want to begin a little bit by talking about why I ended up choosing both these books and how they speak to each other. And I'd love for others to pitch in on whether they could find the kind of synergies between the book that I ended up seeing. There were two main reasons I picked these up. The first, of course, was celebrating friendship and women's friendships in particular. I think sometime back I'd also written in one of the mails that very often we see men and their friendships be valorized in a lot more, media platforms, whether it's movies, television, songs, like the male Yaari is almost always, something that continues in life, even beyond men being in relationships, becoming married, etc., etc. But for women, especially of a generation who are older than us, I've very rarely seen their friendships be celebrated in a wholesome way. Perhaps not when they're young, but when life settles in, you don't really think about women friendships as one of the most important things of their lives. It's almost always about their role as a wife, as a mother, as a sister, etc. So Yari really spoke to me when I first read it last year as describing the pivotal importance of friendships in female and in women's lives. And it also made me think a lot more about what value this friendship brings to us and what is it that women miss out by not having these friendships in their lives or by letting them wither away um, over time. Because we were celebrating the annual meet also, I thought this would be a good way to talk about solidarity and friendship and what spaces gives us. So when I open the discussion on Yari, I definitely like for people to tell us a little bit about what they felt about the space, the role, the importance of female friendship, whether from their own personal experience or going through the book, there was something that spoke to them about, how often female friendships are overlooked at the altar of romantic relationships and love as the most important and defining characteristics of women's lives. And in conversation with that, by Loiter, which is like, one of the most seminal books on the idea of how women occupy space, um, and this was also one of the most commonly requested books that we had in our book club in terms of the book that people wanted to discuss. And for me, reading Yari was in some ways thinking about friendships as resistance, right? Trying to claim space for women in their own lives, things that matter to them for their own sake. And I felt that Violator was also a lot about staking claim to space in the public. So in some ways, I felt that Yari was about staking claim in personal lives to a space that is of one's own. And in Violator, it was about staking claim to a public space. 6 months ago, we had our first author meet with Sohini Chattopadhyay and her wonderful book, The Day I Became a Runner, where she talks about how the act of running was so much about resistance to everything that is expected from women and women's bodies. They're not, we're not used to seeing them, we're not used to interacting with them, we're not used to women being out there without a reason. And Violator is one of the first books that actually spoke about this in a way that had far-reaching repercussions for movements like Pinjara Tod and the way we were thinking about the relationship of women with space. In both ways, women stepping out is a form of resistance, is the way in which they um, become slightly bigger, in that women are so used to kind of rolling onto themselves and minimizing their existence, their own needs, that I felt that both these books to me spoke about um, how to undo that process. Um, so as we begin this discussion, I would really love for all of you to just reflect a little bit about anything that's particularly spoke to you about either of these books and whether you too saw a connection between the way both these books are talking about um, women's right to claim space, right? Um, so yeah, would anyone like to jump in? And you don't actually have to answer the question. You can also just share whatever you loved about the books. So please go ahead.
Um,
Yeah, go.
so I mean, sort of addressing the first thing which you asked,
Yeah.
which is what do friendships and female friendships in particular mean to you, or to anyone for that matter. For me, I feel my friendships are the only relationships in my life which are not transactional in any nature, by I mean any in any way. So my my relationship with my husband, I mean, it is of an institution of marriage. Inherently, there is a certain transaction which is, which goes with it. But my friendships are chosen by me, so hence they are, a way of expressing my independent will, my right to give my time to someone or not to give my time to someone. And I've realized that in my life my friendships have been the real defining, uh I mean sort of the relationships which have defined me the most, because my peer group, the one I kind of grew up with, whether it be in school or college or beyond that, if I spend a lot of my time with them, they do have an influence on my values, on my tastes, on my personality, my ideals, and who I choose to keep and who I choose to let go of. That reflects me as a person and reflects my preferences. And maintaining or letting go of friendships is an act of, um, you know, um, an act of something like that, claiming the right to to express myself and to express who I am.
Mhm.
And it has happened. Friendships do sometimes, even when you don't want them to fritter away, or certain toxic relationships still are there in your life. But if you're more conscious or more thoughtful about it, then yes, they can my friend circle can tell you who I am without having to meet me. That I think that's kind of true for many people. So yeah, that's what
Thank
I
you.
mean. When you're asking everyone what do our friendships mean, that's what they mean to me.
Thank you. That's so sweet. And as your friend, I attest. But would anyone else like to talk a little bit about friendships and the place that and the role that they've played, or anything that stayed from the book? Yeah, please go ahead, Zana.
Um, I didn't. I couldn't finish Yaari because
Mhm.
I was, yeah, I did finish Why Loiter, but I did manage to read few chapters, and there were few of them which was really interesting because um it was for me, like, friendship is outside my marital life. Like, I think Anvita was trying to say as well, like, I've made friends for my own, like, my own space. It is
Mhm.
kind of my space in a different aspect. But and also, the more older I'm getting, the less friends I have. I used to have a lot of friends, and then it's both ways. Maybe I mean, distances was, like, I've moved abroad and stuff, so I lost a lot of friends like that. Then a lot of people got married, and they didn't feel like, both men and women didn't feel like keeping friends, I don't know, outside. It was just awkward for them to meet people outside there whom their partners don't know about, which is strange for me. But I do feel like if you have a friendship network, you can just, like, it's kind of a free therapy. But you can rant to them, you can then have opinion outside, because sometimes you're just stuck in your mind, like, this is how it is. And if you talk to someone, it just helps to see the different view of it. But I do think that when it comes to friendship, men's do have, like, more, like, friends, or right to have friends, while women, like, even my mom and stuff, like, I can see they're not allowed, almost, like, it's not even allowed, like, I don't know what the word is, but to maintain friendships where it's yeah. So I feel like having friends, as and growing up older, I do want to keep more and more friends close to me, for just, yeah, I think, and that what I think Yaari was getting at. But yeah, I've only read like I think first 5-6 chapters or something. Yeah, so
Mhm. But you do get the sense of the same sort of the
yeah.
thought process is the same. I think one thing that really stood out to me is how much effort it requires, beyond a point, to consciously choose and stay friends with people. Like you just said, we grow older, we sort of naturally wither away, but also when you don't have something like school or college or like an institution to facilitate friendships, um, it becomes much more of a conscious choice. And within that, I think it's quite gendered because very often women find it harder to exercise that choice um, than perhaps men. And I think leisure also has something to do with that. The idea of leisure is somehow slightly more alien to women, especially from like an older generation, because there is no such thing as free time. There is always something to be done, um, and that's not something you see the other way around. But yeah, Neetal, please go ahead.
Hi everyone. Sorry for being on a break. I try to make every book club meeting, but I think I've missed a few. Um, I also wanted to touch upon the topic of growing apart from friends who you've grown up with,
Mhm.
which I find very, very strange and uncomfortable with. Uh, I've grown apart, not, I mean, one is distance, but also ideologically, when you grow apart from someone who you share your childhood with, I just can't reconcile that. And I sometimes I'm just at a loss to deal with it. As much as I love my friends, I just can't see eye to eye on certain things, and that troubles me so much.
Mm.
uh, I haven't read the book enough to know if that explores that theme or not, but I would just again be keen to know if anyone has thoughts on that.
Thank you. That's actually lovely. There is a whole section of the book, I think, that talks about in the light of like the anti-CAA protests also, and just generally trying to find a place for one's own viewpoint. And I think you've really, really sort of hit it on the nail about how difficult it is to sort of grow apart from someone because you've recognized that in some ways they're not the same person anymore. And like it's hard. I'll definitely come to the loss bit, but I think Aarti has something to say. Hi, Aarti. Please go ahead.
Yeah. Hi, hello. So I actually read Why Loiter before I joined the book club. And when I saw that you had chosen it for this month, I was absolutely thrilled because I am from Mumbai. And the book had so many moments that, you see around you. You travel by train, you go to malls, you go on the streets, you go to different areas in Mumbai. And you just see that the way they have captured the idea of negotiating freedom in a city which we all think is like one of the most progressive and a free city for women, but in fact it's not. And I mean, I really think that this whole aspect of also talking about how different kinds of women have fun in the city, starting with like Muslim women, differently abled women, rich women, poor women. And my favorite part of all those was the part which talked about, can good girls really have fun? And there's this part about manufacturing respectability. I really really resonated with that because every day, you come across these moments where you can push your boundaries but only up to a certain extent. And that's kind of like freedom but not really freedom. And I also discussed this book with many of my friends, and they also had, very similar thoughts where, we are actually doing what we want, but not really so in the true essence. So, yeah, I mean, I look forward to this discussion, and I have actually the book open here right in front of me. So, yeah, looking forward, and thank you for organizing this.
Thank you so much. That's such a significant point that you've picked up because there is also the intersection of the kind of women we're allowed to see outside, right? Like, of course, we've spoken about this in earlier meetings as well, but respectability also has such a significant class angle to it. In that, low class women who have been forced out of like say poverty or other kinds of hard circumstances to be out there and work don't contend with the same way with this cultural construct of respectability, which is where if you can afford to, you keep the woman inside, right? Like this is something that comes even from, say, Partha Chatterjee's work about the home and the nation. The woman's work is within the home. So, and respectable women are those that are can afford to and are made to stay at home. So why are you going to be outside? I think why loiter? the question itself is so eye-opening, right? Like, why are you loitering at all? It's hiding within it the very assumption that you don't have a right to be without a reason. And so somebody can actually come ahead and ask you, why are you loitering? Because what you're doing is considered unrespectable. So thank you for raising that point. I'd also definitely recommend Smita Radhakrishnan's work on respectability in the Indian context and Nazia Hussain in the Bangladesh context for people who might be interested in thinking about how manufacturing respectability is an important aspect of um, being a woman. Absolutely, Keshav, thank you for that point. Pratham has also said that he's talking about the idea of chosen family, especially for people on the margins. For them, friendships are a source of validation, solace, and comfort, things they crave for, given that they're ostracized within their families. And that's 100% true for um, so many other things, not just, you know, parts of your identity, but also your value systems, things, the choices that you've made. Very often, chosen families become the support system that we're craving in the absence of like intergenerational understanding, which, of course, in the Indian context is quite rampant. Um, but yes, thank you so much. Before we move ahead, I definitely want to ask if people were intrigued. I'll just come to
Sorry to interrupt. Just one thing I just can't resist quoting this from the book to refer to what Aarti, was talking about. In Bandra, for example, one can be a good girl in a short skirt, while in Matunga, good girls show no legs. Though, of course, a Bandra girl in Matunga might be excused. For an outsider, the rules don't apply in quite the same way. I found it so, it's kind of funny, but it's so true, and we know it everywhere, even in Delhi. I think anywhere for that matter.
I think what Aarti was saying is actually really on point, especially with the Bombay bit of it, right? Like in my imagination as somebody from Delhi, I was very convinced that Bombay is a place where everyone can just like girls can just be, right? Girls can have fun, they can be good girls, and they can be out in the streets. Because every time I would hear Bombay is so safe, you can be on the beach, you can like have a nightlife at 3 a.m. In Delhi, people would probably ask you, do you want to get killed if you're going to be out on the street at 3 a.m., right? So it was in that sense, it was kind of eye-opening to see that, well, it's only the degrees that probably vary, but the fundamental questions are not restricted by geography. If we have any other Bombay girls in the group, I'd love to hear if you thought I am dissing on your favorite city, but so definitely Violator made me think this way. Okay, we have some comments in the chat. Lakshmi ma'am has said that, oh, as someone from the older generation, she's talking about the importance of girlfriends. And yes, the point about where are single friends fitting in with couples, right? I think Yaari makes this point constantly about Bollywood tropes around couples as the final frontier of love that leave very little space for friendships within marriage. Like it's such a common refrain that I've heard from my friends as well that you're married but you still manage to be friends, and I'm really happy you didn't change after your marriage. That's because there is an unsaid expectation that once you become a couple, you hang out only with a couple, with someone your husband approves of, or someone that you both can kind of talk to, have commonalities, and then the space for single friends becomes very reduced. So thank you, Lakshmi ma'am, for bringing that point up. I'm sure some people here are nodding, can agree with that. Um, but I definitely did have another interesting thing to discuss here, which was the interesting style in which Yaari is written. I think it was refreshing for me to see um, the written word as not the only way of capturing the essence of a book, in the sense that Yari has the drawings, it has poems, it has cartoons, it has you know spaces that don't conform to the expectation that one has from, say, an anthology. And I thought it was very interesting. Personally, I found it quite refreshing and in some ways delightful to have it interspersed with these different kinds of writing styles. But I'd love to understand if people resonated with that, if there was something that Was it something that discomforted them, or was it
It
something
was,
that
it was lovely. It was almost like a scrapbook or a collage made by a group of
that
friends.
reminded me of scrapbooks we used to fill in farewells, no? Where like I miss you, right? 5 things you like about me. I see Sejal nodding. Would you like to say something?
Yeah. I just like to point out that the way it was written, it felt like, everything was little drops of, joy, and that you could go back to whenever you liked. Whenever you were having a bad day, you felt like you needed a bit of nostalgia, go back, take a chapter, and anything. It could be a drawing also. Like there was this one chapter particularly I would like to show. Like there's this chapter on, I think, quilt, and it has this drawing,
Yeah.
very beautiful drawing. If you look at it, it's actually a quilt, and she has, I think, emotions in it, and it's kind of like a puzzle sort of way, a maze sort of way that you go through. It is very interesting. I just found that, it's a very different way of writing and engaging a person. Just that.
I really enjoyed that. Does anyone else have any favorites? I really thought of that as well, Sejal. Thank you so much. I also like the ones in the circles where like two women are talking to each other. The kind of repetition of that throughout the book um, was very beautiful. Um, so would anyone else want to say something? Yeah, okay. I'm seeing the comment here. Priyanka has a comment here about loitering in Varanasi since arriving um, and loitering around in a kurti as a revolutionary act. I think it's beautiful because when I first read this book many years ago, um, I don't think loitering as a concept existed in my mind, right? Like one wouldn't think about the purpose of being without reason. And in my head as well, I think I was forced to think about um, why would I not have a justification for why I'm going out? Who just goes out to be, right? And people around me, like men, had always made these jokes about gedi marna, which was a very like Punjabi thing, right? Like you're just going around for a round. My brother used to do that while I was growing up, and I never had that, and I never thought I was losing something. But when I read By Loiter, I realized that I had such a different relationship with space because I had never given myself the freedom to loiter. And I remember having a conversation with a friend who said that the first time in her life that she got lost was actually in a different country. And the feeling was so different from being in India and getting lost because somehow inherently there was an idea that India/Delhi is an unsafe place, so you can't afford to get lost. Your phone can't get switched off, your Google Maps must always be on, you must have a way to like jump off an auto or like run away in case something bad is happening. Um, but but I remember my brother once we were going somewhere and he decided to take a turn which was not on the Google map because there was so much traffic, right? And I was aghast. I was like, "Why are you taking this turn?" And he said, "I'm just trying to figure out a new route. So what if I get lost? I'll find a new way and maybe come across something new in the city." And my mind was blown that this man is purposely taking a wrong direction just to navigate and see the city a little more because in my mind that was never a way of being. So I think the power of loitering or the power of changing your relationship with the city is such a profound thing that this book has talked about. um, I think it fundamentally altered the way I was looking at things. But I'd love to hear from other people about their own experiences as well, and whether something from the book resonated when they were thinking about this. um, Jenna has her hand up. Please go ahead.
Um, I think, like you said, like I've never thought like I've missed out until I was in Delhi. And when I came to the UK, going to parks was, for me, like you have to have something to go to park, right? Like a picnic or you're meeting a friend. You just wouldn't turn up. But as you know, like UK, like at least in England, there are lots of parks, like where I live as well. So until I think I met my husband, I didn't think like I would just go to a park and lie down in the sun. It was just ridiculous, like as an idea. Like the grass was not, I was not comfortable in my own skin. And I would just be like, why are we lying here? Like, what do... And I think slowly, like now that I work from home mostly, and then I do make myself go out every day for, myself and just sit without phone or a book or anything and just be, and or sometimes with a book or sometimes with my lunch, but something that I can't imagine doing back in India. But I used to go to park in India to meet a friend, like but it was so crowded and like everyone is watching, even with this eye, they can hear you talking to your friend, what you're speaking. But it was also like limited to, again, that class, because I was part of this, community, which I had access to park, but not everyone did. While here it's like everyone does have, it's not a paid park, like anyone can turn up. It just depends how much time you have. And when she talks about having public space for everyone, like crushing boundaries, that is so revolutionary, I thought. And I had never thought about public spaces being revolutionary, but it just made me think, like, you've got to have spaces which are maintained by the government or by the councils, which are just for everyone, who can just turn up and be, and then you can make friends. If you don't want to make friends, don't make friends, but just be. And I can loiter here now, but I never thought about being revolutionary until I read the book. And I was like, yes, it is so much important. Like in Delhi, like you said, I need to have a purpose. Like if I'm going to metro station, if I'm meeting a friend, or if I'm going for a work, or if I'm going to college. But yeah, I think it has, now that she says it, and it's really refreshing to have a space in public without anyone staring at you, or, just be yourself in a way. So
That's so lovely. Thank you for sharing that, Zena. And 100% agree with you. I think it has changed my relationship with my body as well, being in a different place, because I can actually see myself differently. I'll come to you, Anvita. Varsha has something. Please go ahead, Varsha. You have your hand raised.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Hello. So good to see you.
So I have two points to make. One is, what is the relationship of the kind of city you live in with your ability to loiter? I grew up in Chandigarh, and in the 90s, although despite terrorism, Chandigarh was a relatively very small and safe space, and all the women were out and they had either their lunas or mopeds or kainis. So, there was a culture of women being seen on the streets at least till 8 or 9 p.m., 8 p.m. maybe. So, we used to go out a lot, and until, I like grew up and went to other cities, to Patna and Bhubaneswar, I never realized. And then when I got married, I talked to my sister-in-law, who said that she never stepped out in Patna, through her college, through her postgrad. Even if she had to go to college, there would always be somebody escorting her. And in fact, in central India, no girl steps out on her own unless she is accompanied by a father or a brother. So, our ability to loiter is, I think, somehow shaped so much by the patriarchy. We are simply not able to. And another point that you were making about, it being a revolutionary thing. So I would bring it to Shaheen Bagh. Like in Delhi, as you say, it's not a safe city. Of late, also, it's not safe city. But in 2019, December, when we started going to Shaheen Bagh and Jamia, and we saw the atmosphere there, it was, like I've seen in Delhi, there are slut walks. But even those slut walks are like regimented spaces. And although they are talking about, being able to walk on the streets, really, it's a very limited and elite kind of phenomenon. But the beautiful thing about Shaheen Bagh was that here women were sitting through the night on the streets, and women were moving from, we were walking all the way from Jamia to Shaheen Bagh at any time of night, and it was a safe and a wonderfully liberating experience. I mean, I'm not experienced. My 19-year-old daughter who went, she said that this is the first time on Delhi streets that I feel absolutely safe, when we were in Jamia. So I I just wanted to kind of share this, that sometimes when it becomes a less elite thing, this being able to walk on the streets, then it becomes truly revolutionary in a way that it is not when we, talk in terms of let us walk the night or all those movements. Shaheen Bagh did something totally different. I mean, it kind of made me feel that loitering, when it becomes a universal a phenomena in which women from all walks of life take part, then it becomes like such a big thing, and you have to like experience it to know how beautiful it is, how wonderful it is, magical, in fact.
Thank you. That is so kind of you to say, and also um, it's a it's actually truly beautiful to hear how that intersectionality thing actually is empowering, not just for like not just for someone who is say so closely in their identity related to the kind of protest that you're talking about, but also for everybody else. Like democratizing space is something that makes it empowering across the board, right? Whereas elite sort of empowerment is way less inclusive in some ways. I definitely agree with
I
you.
don't know. I also felt that here the women were standing up for their men, like in Shaheen Bagh. Maybe because the men were the ones who were shielded by the women, whether it was in Jamia or in
Mm.
Shaheen Bagh. And that kind of, overturned the whole equation about ghar se bahar nahi nikalna hai.
It also challenges our understanding of who's political, who is aware, who is allowed to fight, because in our understanding women are always more passive recipients, right? In general understanding women are more passive recipients, and like politics is the domain of men. But it's actually beautiful to say that, and there is a long history of women spearheading a lot of these movements. But it's interesting to see that them claiming space changes the way we think about who they are as a people as well. um,
Absolutely.
so
Absolutely.
that thank you for that. I do also want to flag the point that you made about the city, the specific city and the regional history of patriarchy in that particular place. I remember going to Jaipur many years ago and being really shocked that there was no woman on the street after like 6 p.m. because it was not normal, and it took me a second to understand why I was feeling slightly more disturbed. But and like you said, it varies a lot. It varies from region, it varies from manifestation of patriarchy. But I was wondering on the flip side whether smaller spaces also lead to more surveillance. Like if you're in a small city like Chandigarh or
Yes,
like a Shimla,
surveillance.
then somebody is going to see you and
I,
report that to your mother that I saw her on the road with this boy. So quite.
I was lucky because I was in a girls' hostel. So देख भी लिया तो उस जमाने में there was no phone to report. So we can't read him.
And definitely also the point about university spaces being, I think, the only enclosure within like larger cities where there has been some more freedom, like as a student from JNU, and like you said, being in Jamia. I mean, I found it like thrilling that I could be out at 2 a.m. For a walk and like sit at Ganga Dhaba and chat about things simply because the university afforded me that sense of security. So truly beautiful. I think Gauri has her hand up. Please go ahead. Gauri.
Yes. Hi. So like I was also going to make a similar point. Like I studied in Miranda House for my bachelor's in physics, and like I also experienced somewhat a similar experience. Like I could even wear a bralette inside the college premises, and I used to like live within the hostel too. So it's like even more like an elite space for me. Like I can wear anything I want, and like I do not have to even cross Hudson Lane or any place in rickshaw to go to the college and have people staring at me. And like at times I could see the transition as soon as I go outside the hostel to the like maybe arts faculty outside, which is like I have to walk outside and like counter men there and them watching me wearing whatever I want. But it's like not simply in the same way, because people, and especially men, of course, do not see you in the same way, and like of course they will catcall you, but the kind of experience you actually get within the college is definitely like even different. And even like right now I'm doing my masters in Paris, so even I cannot still have the same clothes that I used to wear within the college, because it's a only women's only college space. So even if the country has changed, the experience does not really, at par with, like, even if it's a first world country, but like living within a women's only college and having those, like, it's really empowering. And I, of course, it's a very big bubble to live in, which does not really counter within, like, even
But
if I'm changing a country.
but you raised a really important point, right? Like the significance of sex segregation in sort of making a space more accessible. Like I know this is a pet favorite of a lot of people, that the metro should not have a ladies coach, right? Or for instance, that anything that is not the ladies coach is the men's coach, right? But the sort of freedom that you experience specifically in a girls only institution or in a girls only space is categorically different from one where where a man is also allowed to enter. And I know it sounds kind of problematic to say that, but we've also talked a little bit in the past about just a group of men existing, and as a single woman alone walking, crossing them, there is a sense of threat that can be internalized, even if they're doing nothing to you, right? And I think we read that in the runner book as well, that it is literally visibility that guarantees so much more power and so much more confidence to a woman. Just seeing another woman would make you feel like 5 times safer. And I'm sure all of us have stories of at least once in our life randomly approaching a woman we didn't know because we were feeling kind of uncomfortable and just standing next to them because somebody, you're kind of trying to avoid somebody who's giving you stalkerish looks, or like, I know I have gone and said something like, please stand next to me because I'm feeling uncomfortable with this person. And absolutely stranger women have stood up and understood exactly what I was trying to tell them and showed up. So that is a beautiful thing. I think this is also where Yaari and Violet intersect. Sorry, you're saying something. Were you saying something, Gauri? I thought.
No, I was just agreeing with you. Like it's like, yeah, I still even talk to my like, international classmates here, and I do recall how the experience, even if I'm living in France, it's not the same as I was living in like in a women's only college. And definitely even like, especially because physics is a male dominated area, so like most of our professors used to be female, which is like very a big transition in terms of class ratio too. So like it's not the same. Even our professors are not like really, most of them are men, so like the transition I see he is like very big. And like, yeah, it's a very truly like a very fond experience for me to live there, even if it's not the real world per se.
Thank you for that. It's also interesting that Why Loiter is actually one of the books that spearheaded a lot of the Pinjara Tod movement. So because, the moment we have too many women in a place, there is this sense of insecurity about what to do with them, right? And they become a problem for men to solve. And I remember as a student in LSR that the hostels would be closed from outside. They would be locked from outside after 8 p.m. And like the girls would be inside. Not only was it a fire hazard, it was also like extremely infantilizing to a lot of women. But there were security guards and men who were extremely scared that this is a potent threat to have women in one place. So many young and were apparently free. But the book has been actually instrumental in changing a lot of these perceptions and facilitating dialogue through activism, through discussion, through so many more ways of rethinking about what it means to be respectable. Okay, somebody else also had their hand up. I'm forgetting who that was.
Am I audible?
Yeah, please go ahead.
Yeah, so hi Tanya. I have not read the book because I have been moving around from Jaipur to Banaras.
Okay.
I did my undergrad from a girls only college. It was a completely different experience. Now I'm in a new city. My
Right.
parents are not around. My father and my brother are not around. So it helps me. I would like to say one thing that when you move to another city, get your own apartment, and when you're, I would, what to call it, yeah, like a patriarchal household, when you move from that household to a completely new city on your own, that's a
Hmm.
completely different experience. Even though the city might be unsafe or might be, let's say, orthodox or whatever word you want to use for it, but
Hmm.
there's still that sense of freedom one feels as a woman. One feels when they move out on their own,
Hmm.
when the family's not there, the freedom to loiter around. I feel that.
Absolutely.
So
It's also because you feel less worried about the honor that you're carrying on your shoulders, no? Like the burden of like make sure you don't do anything to embarrass us. So very often women restricting themselves is not just about them, it is also about the weight they carry to make sure they're not doing something else that would make the family unhappy. Um, but
I have a question that I would like the younger folks here to kind of answer, which is like when now I have a daughter, and when she's out in Delhi, although I have read Why Loiter, although I have loitered myself, I am concerned. I keep on pinging. You said 9 p.m. and it's 9:30 now. Where are you? And like she responds that, Mama, cool down. I'm so on a practical front, I feel that you want to loiter, you want your daughters to loiter, but the fear of it, I resented my parents when my parents kind of waited up for me, but I cannot help feeling anxious when my daughter is outside. So, how do we kind of, negotiate this?
go
So,
for it, Anvita,
ma'am,
go for it. Yeah.
um, now this is we are diverting our conversation slightly from the loveliness of the books to the reality of life and of daily life for that matter, and that too for women. So what you I don't know whether this is advisable, but it really helped me mentally to have a pepper spray, to have share my location with people. But this is later on in life, so after the age of 25, 26. When I was in my teenage years, as I think your daughter is, I was quite I was quite resistant to giving my parents that kind of insight into my life, where I'm telling them explicitly that this is where I'm going to be and I'm going to be at this place. It's a lounge, it's a club, it's a whatever. No, none of that. I used to confide in my siblings, so my brother, my younger brother, simply because that sin generational um sort of uh similar mindedness would be that he wouldn't be judging me, because he would get that that's a place that's fine to be with, as be at, as long as I maintain certain take some precautions on my own. I did start doing that because I knew that that was my responsibility. At the end of the day, in Delhi, there are no guarantees, but if
I,
there's good, solid communication as to what it is which is worrying you and gives you anxiety, um, and what she can do to sort of decrease that,
yeah.
and rather than you wanting to curb her freedom, it's just that you want her to be safe.
I, I
Uh,
I do want to say, like, I kind of disagree a little bit with you there, Amrita, even though like I know Varsha ma'am's coming from a great place of like wanting to keep people safe. But I mean, like you probably know from your own experience, it doesn't really work to like to try and curb people, because they all find a way. And I'm sure all of us have also found like friends or partners or brothers or sisters who have covered for us when we have kind of done things that were not acceptable. And I feel that having that ability, and having being able to actually say what you're really doing really lifts that burden off somebody to rather than to have this elaborate set of kind of manipulation or lies to try and cover your tracks, which is also acting exacerbating your own sense of unsafe feelings. But my general sense though is that more people on the street, more women at a time that is not
In Bombay,
okay.
I don't worry. In Bombay, I don't worry where she's going. She's living a PG. She comes back at 1. That's fine. In
Yeah,
Delhi, I do get anxious.
no,
So, I mean, I just to defend my suggestions, I didn't mean, I just that it is a reality that at a certain age and
yes,
stage, some of us were not so open and honest with our parents, and I don't know. I hope I'm sure that's
God,
not.
that's the
And
only way to survive Indian parents. And
and so
believe
you
you
have
me,
a
we
life
also become
basically.
Indian parents.
and
Exactly.
we have
But
to
then,
take the side.
with that reality in mind, I want, like, if you can just equip her with certain tools, which, and also have the conversation where you tell her that it's not about restricting your freedom, it's just for my own peace of mind, that that these are the things in this city. It is unfortunately the world
I
we are living in.
one more thing though, I'd also like to flag that a lot of this, like somebody's also said, is has to do with the anxiety has to do with like a hyper construction of fear, through like media discourses and through sort of like there is a phantom fear for a lot of us, even though all of us have had some kind of experience, but the fear gets exaggerated to such a large extent, that we're living half lives in the process because we're not even ready to concede that it might not actually be the case. It might not actually be that unsafe. But
And actually, Tana is right. So,
I'm
for example,
Anvita,
uh,
1 second. Sorry, I,
sorry.
I'm sorry to cut you in, but I just saw that Shilpa ma'am is already here, and we've been, and I do want to like have her in the conversation, and then we can definitely continue. Gauri also had something to say. I'll definitely come back to that, but thank you so much, ma'am, for joining us. Hello, Shilpa ma'am is here to everybody who has been waiting very anxiously. Um, is Mithila ma'am also there? I'm sorry if I can't see you.
Hi, I'm
Hi,
here.
hi,
And
hi.
please don't call me ma'am, just Nicola, it's fine.
Okay, I will definitely try.
Yeah, same here too.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you so very much, Shilpa and Mithila, for joining us. I am really indebted to you. I know Samira ma'am, you said, is running slightly late. She should be joining us in another few minutes as well. We have been having such a heated and amazing discussion on everything, everything that is friendship and that is the loitering and that is resistance and space. And first off, I would just really love to thank you for like the beautiful book that you have curated. There's so many things to love about it. I wouldn't know where to start, but I do want to express my thanks to you from on behalf of all of us, for this fabulous collection. Today is also our anniversary celebration, so we're doing friendship as resistance, and आज यारी की शाम है हमारे आज की शाम यारी के नाम is a tagline one of our members has made.
Congratulations.
Thank
On
you so
1 year,
much.
it's amazing.
No, and you've made it so much more special by joining us. I'd definitely let everyone come in with their own questions, which I'm sure they're burning to ask you. But I'd really love it if you could just take a few minutes to tell us a little bit about yourselves and just about the process of getting this book together. How did you think it up? How did you? I mean, we could talk about Yaari right now, and then maybe when Samira ma'am joins us, a little bit about why Loiter. But how did you go about thinking this project? It is also very radical in the way that it has curated writing, not just in prose, but also, all different forms of poetry and graphics and cartoons and all those things. How did you collate it? There are 100 authors. How did you bring it together? We'd love to hear a little bit more about that, and then we can take it from there. So, thank you. Please go ahead.
Nethila, you want to start?
No, you go ahead and I'll add.
Okay, I'll start on the book, but I came into the room when Varsha was talking about what it means to have a child, And I now have a 14-year-old and I'm being called upon to walk the talk. And it is so hard. I have to say it is so hard. And I have been asked, did you really write that book? Are you a fake feminist? So I want to put that out there that it is really hard. However one is committed to the idea. All right. So coming to Yaari. Uh, so I don't know. I think we wrote it in the introduction as well. We were talking about life and friendship, and it was the middle of the pandemic, and we said, oh, we should do some research on friendship, and this conversation went on for a while, and we said, we should actually edit a book and get more people to write about it, because at that point, just the idea of even doing research was so exhausting at some level. Um, and I think before we had a publisher, we just put together that one little slide, which was a call for narrative, artwork, poems, and so on. And we put it out on social media. And the response was incredible. I mean, we regretted very badly that we didn't put a Google form, because we had to physically collate all of that into an Excel sheet. And we got the most amazing pitches. In fact, the last 25 or 30 pitches that we finally we refused like really late in the day. It was very bad of us, but we kept feeling like, oh, we can expand the book a bit more. Oh, we can expand the book a bit more. It was just, and I think that it was a moment at which a lot of people were thinking about friendship. So it was also very serendipitous to be in that moment. So we were not the only ones thinking about what it meant to have friends, to not have spent enough time with friends in the pre-pandemic, and to be deeply regretting it when you couldn't anymore, and to realize that we devote so much of our lives to productive labor in a very global capitalist neoliberal sense, and that eventually, when we are stuck in this little bubble that those of us who are privileged enough to be able to have, all we could think of were the fact that we couldn't see our friends. Nithila, can I hand over to you to add?
So, and before I begin, I also want to sort of say that Shravanti Dasri, who's done one of the essays in the book, one of my favorite essays, which is titled on What Bollywood Did Not Teach Me About Friendship. She is also here on the call, so if she could say hi, I'd love that. And Shravanti has also been a friend of mine for 10 years now. And Shravanti will tell you that let's write something together is my version of let's form a music band together type scene. I think it's every academic, that's the thing, when you get to some sort of comfort with the other person, it's like, let's do something fun together. And our idea of fun is to write something together, is to put something. So it really started off as a late night conversation, as Shilpa said, during the pandemic, where we were having this discussion. And I honestly thought that it was going to be a pipe dream, right? Because it was the middle of the pandemic. We were finding it difficult even to do our day-to-day work. But Shilpa really sort of took it on, and she spoke immediately to Arpita, who's from Yoda Press, and we started working on this. I remember it was, I think, June 23rd when we put out the call, and we got some 250 amazing sort of ideas and pitches. And as academics also, I mean, though we wanted to do research, we were also, like Shilpa said, not in the space where we wanted to do academic work. And as much as academic spaces prioritize papers and publications and Scopus index journals and so on and so forth, we really wanted something that would bring us joy and would bring other people joy. And honestly, Tanya, I mean, I really want to take this opportunity to thank you, because this was our dream when we started the book, that people would find community within the pages of the book, and there would be communities that sprung up around the book. I mean, this is really, honestly,
thank you so much. That is
our
so
dream.
sweet.
Like, you've made our dream come true. Like, more than the book being published, it's honestly this, right? Like, that people come and read and reflect and think together and rethink their lives and rethink their friendships and appreciate how much friends have done for them in their lives. So thank you so much. Another thing I also want to thank you for, and I know I'm really going off topic here, is your lovely review. I think I will always take it to my grave that you compare our work to bell hooks. Like, there cannot be a bigger compliment to somebody who's read bell hooks, has been inspired by bell hooks.
Absolutely. I know
It's just been Yeah, thank you so very
I
much for
am
that.
so grateful. I should tell you, I was crying while I was like reading your book because there were so many feelings coming up, and I think I would have written that review right like in sort of one shot, right? Like there was just so much outpouring, and I think I wrote it like it was almost like a love letter to the book. I felt like I wish I was a part of it, but this was my way of sort of paying homage to it, and I mean it's every word of it was fully meant. So thank you.
Thank you. No, thank you so very much. And really, for us, I think for Shilpa and me, this was a love letter to all the friends that we've made in the past, to all the friends that we were going to make. I think we often don't really express how much our friends have done for us. And for me, I mean, speaking for myself, I'm a woman in my mid-30s, single, and living in a city where I don't have family. And for the past more than a decade, friends have been the people who have seen me through ups and downs. They've done very mundane, regular things like grocery shopping with me, figuring out taxes with me. They've also been there when I've been in the hospital. Shilpa here really saw me through a bad sort of COVID case. I mean, they've really been with me. And I mean, I don't want to say friends like family. I think that's something that we tend to sort of fall back on because we tend to place family at a higher level than friends. But my friends have really been my social support system, and they've really helped me through. And especially in some ways, I mean, I know all friends are special, but in some ways, my single women friends have been my ride or die. They get it. They get what it is um, to sort of live in a city and to find housing as a single woman, to live life as a single woman where all of your choices are being questioned. They've really, really seen me through my late 20s and early 30s. And this is truly a love letter to all of them.
You can see that. Like, I think we were discussing that joy is the one thing that you take away when you're reading this book, because it's the feeling that is kind of, it's almost like you bottled it up like one would in a perfume and like put it between the covers of the book. And actually, I wanted to thank Arpita ma'am as well. All of us were waiting so anxiously for the print copy, like the second run. I think we spammed her with like orders or like tried to request her to please get another copy because I mean, of course, we had like the PDF and people were able to access it, but it was so much like so much more love, you know, just having the book in our hands and seeing all the beautiful colors and yeah. Thank you, Sejal. So many thanks once again. I think your book has accomplished every single thing that you would have imagined it to and more. So thank you for that. I'd love to have Savanthi ma'am also please say something before we open it up for everyone else as well.
I'm a little like taken aback, Shravanti ma'am's speech thing to hear.
I will try my best to
Yeah, so as Mithila said, we've been friends for 10 years. Eight of those years have been long distance friendship. Mithila is also we both have our retirement plans lined up, you know. We are who, when we are old and cranky and wobbly, it's she who's going to be there for me. And, you know, we're trying to make that happen. So, and Mithila is also someone who has, Mithila and I have had millions of conversations about friendship and, you know, not just oh, we're friends, we're great friends, but like the politics of it and how it fits into so many things and how it's informed our lives. And yeah, I mean, the friend I am today to others as well is because of her and what she's done for me. So it was a book, and my research, my PhD research is sort of also related to ideas of friendship, intimacy. So it was a book I would have been most disappointed if I wasn't a part of. Luckily, they both thought my essay was worth putting in there. And yeah, it's such a great book. And like, it's just something I've been giving as gifts to everyone and like recommending to everyone. And a friend of mine just ordered some copies because another friend of hers is getting married. And she said, this is what you need to, you know, Yaari is what you need to carry through your marriage, because that's going to like really hold you together. So I think it's taken a life of its own. And yeah, I'm so excited to hear what the discussions were.
I should actually add that Mithila was just saying that, single women and single friends have been like the sort of backbone. I should say that, I mean, even after marriage, like I have realized that we were just talking about the little space that is very much our own, right? Where we hark back to what we were and what we imagined ourselves to be in the future. Has so much to do with like maintaining those friendships despite everything from Bollywood to like TV telling you that once you become a couple, that is it. You can only have couple friends. But we were talking about how our old friends, female friends, and friendships have sustained us through so many different stages and phases of life. So thank you. I also hear that Neha Singh ma'am is also here. Can we also hear from her now that I think Sneha now sorry, I'm forgetting her surname, but Sneha was also supposed to be here. Unfortunately, she fell unwell. But please,
Hi, I'm
hi
here.
Neha, please do share your own views and thoughts about everything as well.
uh, well, actually, it's really nice for me to just, I mean, I'm meeting Nithila actually like this for the first time, probably. Shilpa and I have met on multiple occasions, and of course, the Why Loiter book has been like life-changing for me. Um, because we started the Why Loiter campaign based on the Why Loiter book and its ideas. And now it's been more than 10 years that we have been loitering. Uh, and just last night, we had a loitering session on the roads. And we called it the Crow Walk, which was one of the participants' ideas that we should all dress in all black and be like crows. Uh, Also that India had won the final, so like everybody was out on the
On the
roads
streets,
last night, and
absolutely.
suddenly from it being like isolated, lonely, some back road in Malad West, it suddenly became like all the flags were out and families and all cheering was happening. So it really also last night, it was like within a split second, the whole energy of a public space can change from being isolated and uh, a little bit scary and lonely to suddenly being so vibrant and celebratory. um and of course, Yaari, I'm so honored and so happy that I didn't know so many people had sent in their ideas for it, and I got my idea got selected, and it's a part of it. Yay! Now I'm feeling like little more proud of it. I thought it was just like um, whoever sent in the ideas, everything got published. But yeah, I wrote, sorry, I've just come back from the gym, so my face is a little red. But I wrote about my really, really close friend who was my neighbor. She just moved to Delhi because she got married. But um, so I wrote this little essay called, what was it called? Uh,
A hug and some chamomile tea.
Yes, 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 yes. A hug and some chamomile tea, both served warm, something like that it was called. And it was all Sachi Ghatnaon pe Aadharit. Uh, so yeah, and reading everybody else's work in that as well, and what female friendships mean to all of us. Of course, I mean, I can't emphasize enough what female friendships have done for me in my life, and will keep on doing. I think one of the major reasons that I'm still feeling strong and excited about life and positive and feeling good about myself over all these years is not because of family at all, and not because of men in my life. It is only and only because of the women friends that I have and my two dogs. So yeah, I really don't know what I would have done or where I would have been or what I would have thought of myself if it wasn't for, the women friends that I have, because they have really like always been like such amazing cheerleaders for everything that I have done or am doing or plan to do. And like like sometimes like I'll say, oh, I really want to do this, like make a play with blind people or something like that. And then 2 months later, one friend will be like, hey, you mentioned that you're going to make a play with blind people. What's happening about that? And I'd be like, oh, I just said that. I'm not actually going to do that. And they'll be like, no, no, you must do that. That was such a great idea.
I think female friends are also like the most accountability, the strongest accountability mechanism. They can call you out in a way I think other people can't, right? Like they like, we know
Yes.
what you're doing and what
Yeah.
you're behind.
Yeah. Yeah. And also, I think as women, we are always made to think that our ideas are not important
Yes.
and our ideas will never get materialized into reality, and our ideas are just just some dreamy things. But it's the women in our lives who really believe in our ideas and our dreams and really give us that push and that constant the accountability that you just said, that no, I mean, do it. Like, why aren't you doing it? You said this last year. It's already been a year and you haven't like gotten off your ass and done this. So, like that's so important, because a lot of times we don't have faith in ourselves and our families also. I mean, a lot of our families don't have faith in our ideas and the way that we want to live our lives, and that money is not the only thing. And it's also the men don't understand at all, I feel.
I think that is definitely something I do want to like, sort of open up to everybody. Like you also made a conscious choice, right? Like you said that this book was sort of featuring, highlighting, and talking so much more about women and queer folks as the sort of main protagonists, and not kind of the side characters in the life story that they're used to thinking about. So I
Yeah.
definitely try to ask everyone, the authors and the editors, whether there was, a particular way in which this came about in trying to highlight this very specific strand of like gender strand of friendship, the way that you were thinking about this. I mean, of course, we're not trying to say that male-female friendships are not important or that those relationships aren't, but um, I'd love to hear from you about the kind of surprising things maybe that came out when you were collating this book, something that maybe took you also a little bit by surprise, or something that you hadn't thought and came out counterintuitively, and maybe also made you rethink about how the collection would look. I would really love to hear from you about that. So
Actually, the one thing that did surprise us is that among the pitches we got was our first, in fact, in the very first few emails, was a fully written piece. Yeah, it's the one that appears in the book, and it's called The Queen and I by Raina Bhattacharya. It was the first full piece. It was not a pitch, it was an entirely written piece. And it was about friendship with an artificial intelligence. It was with a friendship with an app. And it was like, both of us were like, what? Because that was really literally, I mean, because we were expecting much more the kind of thing that that Neha was talking about, and we got those as well. But this was the first thing that we got, and it was quite something. And if you read the piece, it's quite revelationary in a sense, and both the kind of emotions that the author experiences, but also the way in which it ends, right? Because at one point she says that Rani became also very attached to her, and when she started talking about her other friends, Rani the app turns around and says, oh, maybe you don't need me, you have so many friends. And so there's this kind of moment at which we stop, right? Because you're also, and it also came at a moment when there's also simultaneously chat GPT happening in another space, and you're asking all of these questions about AI and personification and the space of what of post-humanism, if you like, in some sense. And so I think that, I mean, there were other moments, and perhaps Nithila wants to talk about some of them. But I think this was because it was literally, it must have been the third or fourth email in our box, in the email that we created
Very
for the
much
book.
enjoyed it. It was very refreshing. It was very enjoyable to like, and also kind of scary, like a very Black Mirror kind of way of like, who knows what the future holds for us. Yeah. Nithila, please go ahead.
Yeah, just to quickly sort of add to that, I mean, we did think also about the title and whether we wanted to include the words women and queer folks in the title, because very often you see anthologies that completely consist of cis het men that don't ever say that, right? That don't ever say that this is anthology by men. It just says an Indian anthology, or it locates it geographically maybe, but never really in terms of gender. And this is something that we mulled over for quite a bit. And then we took a conscious decision to do it because we wanted to claim those identities. And as a part of that, I mean, when we put out the call, of course, we said South Asians. We were eliciting sort of responses from South Asian people of South Asian origin. But that is a term that we decided to leave out of the title because in some ways, the idea of South Asia is also an imposed identity. It is a militaristic term. It's imposed from the outside. And therefore, that is something that, I mean, though we write about it in the introduction, it's not something that we included in the title. So just in terms of what we wanted to focus on, we wanted to claim the gender identities very much when we worked on this book. And in terms of like something that was surprising, I don't think it was surprising as much as how touched and moved I was by especially the essays in the two sort of in two categories. One was grief, longing, and loss, and the other was distance, disappointment, and rage. And the essays in both of these categories just explore the difficulties in friendship, which I think we get far less space to also talk about, whether it's questions of caste. There's Rithika's work on autism and how that makes sort of friendship difficult. There are so many of these essays, sort of religious divides, communalism, and how all of these in some ways affect friendship, and how friendships are also like sort of impacted by these ideas. And as much as we want to celebrate friendship, I think that was an idea that both Shilpa and I were clear about from the very beginning, that we don't simply want this to be a celebratory tool, something that just talks about how amazing friendship is, but also something that would go into the difficulties of friendship, the messiness of it. Like all relationships, friendship is also something that is very much rooted in our social realities and is impacted by the world around us. So I think for me, the essays in those categories are very, very special.
That is so beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing that, because I think I literally had that next, which was, like going from joy to like the immense sadness at the loss of a lot of friendships, and how friendship itself is a political act, right? Like the kind of solidarities that you form, the ones that stay and the ones that don't. Especially in the sort of political climate that you were writing and creating this book, I thought it was quite something. And we don't really talk about the loss of friendships in the way that we mourn breakups and we mourn the end of romantic relationships. So I definitely did want to get to that. I'm sure we'll find a minute to answer that. I also just want to acknowledge that Samira ma'am has just joined us. Hello, and thank you so much for joining us, ma'am. We've been talking so much about the overwhelming emotions that these books have brought into us. Like, definitely want to thank you so much for joining us, for writing the books that you've written. And I think it's a good point from now to transition to why Loiter from Yaari, from all the joy and all the happiness to the politics and the anger and the resistance that why Loiter represents. It's been more than 10 years. The book has, not just been an example of excellent writing, but also of activism, in that it has spurred such a great legacy of movements of people actually thinking differently about what it means to be. So I definitely love to hear from you, ma'am, about um, both the writing up when you all decided to write by Loiter. How did you start thinking about this, and how do you reflect on the afterlife of the book? A decade after it has been out in the public. So, Samira ma'am, if you can just start, and then we have the others also pitch in. Would love to hear.
I just
Shilpa,
want,
do you want to go?
yeah.
Yeah,
No,
just
no, I
Shilpa,
just
sorry.
want to add before Samira speaks that Samira also has an essay in Yaari. And in fact, her essay, in a sense, speaks to what Nethila was speaking of at the tail end of it, what it means to be a Muslim and have friends. And there's a not a counterpiece, there are two separately written pieces, which is why we actually decided, we played with the idea of putting them next to each other, and then we decided that they actually work better in two different sections. But there's the other piece by Ayman Khan that talks about it from perhaps from a different lens. So perhaps before we start talking about why Loiter, and one of the things I when you asked us to do both these books together, one of the things I said that I have to say at the very outset is that for Samira, Shilpa, and me, the greatest gift of why Loiter was each other. Seriously, I mean, because we were not friends when we started this research. We were colleagues, we were collaborators, and we became friends along the way. And it's been 21 years, yeah, since we started that research. So
I
And people find it difficult. People keep telling us you'll kill each other at the end of it. Nobody can do collaborative work like this. Research maybe, but writing definitely not. And we haven't. In fact, we've gone from strength to strength. We just really enjoy. And everybody keeps saying, what is the secret of it? I said, I think it could be that we came on 3 different disciplines. So we respected each other's disciplinary, strengths, in that sense. So it could be that. It could be also that they're just wonderful people and we just work very well together. But I think that we came in 3, Shilpa Ranade is an architect, Shilpa Patke is a sociologist, I'm a journalist, right? So we came from different disciplines and we respected each other's disciplinary strengths. So I think that helped, definitely.
But would definitely, like Shilpa ma'am said, would you also like to comment on the sort of continuity and like you're in some ways the link here between the politics that is at the intersection of both friendship and stepping out.
Okay, so I think my piece, which Ayman did a different kind of piece, there are 2 different pieces, but so when I looked at it as being the Muslim friend, the token Muslim friend, I talked about that being an Indian Muslim, my experience, a lot of people talk about losing friends in this whole sort of very polarized India, but I actually had experience I didn't actually. I had friends, who stood by. And probably makes it easier for me to continue living in India, being in India, not feeling I'm totally wilting away. But, and I totally respect that lots of people have had very different. I've had some, but in that essay, I've reflected on really the fact that I've had friends who stood by and, it's so the experience, there's not one experience. Ayman Khan's essay is a little different because she has a different experience of losing friends or something. But, and both are valid experiences. Both are they're all kinds of experiences. And it's not that I haven't had those, but I chose to reflect on the ones. I thought there were a lot of positives in what friendship had given me as a quality is to, particularly to continue to live in very polarized India is really friendship. Friendship continues to sustain me in deep ways with my country. So, so that was the kind of tact I had. So, in that. Yeah, but it's a wonderful volume and it's so varied and it's just amazing. Yeah,
absolutely.
Tanya, can I just interrupt for a second? I'm really sorry about this, but I also want to say, just in talking about the relationship between the 2 books, I have had the privilege, the pleasure of sitting in the classrooms of both of them, Shilpa and Samira. They've taught me. And honestly, I wouldn't be the person that I am, the researcher that I am, without their training, their sort of the generosity, really, both within the classroom and outside of it. And I think so much of who I am as a person, so much of my politics has been influenced by both of them. So I would really also take this opportunity to thank both of them for being so generous and to generations of students. It's just amazing. I think I take a lot of my inspiration.
Mithila, this is becoming like an Oscar speech. Oscar.
No, but also I want to take sort of some, as a teacher now, I think I take so much inspiration from what both of you have done for me. So thanks.
That is a big, maybe a new volume on like inspiring teachers and role models who leave us like, with like an imprint on our consciousness for like the whole of life would be the next in pipeline. that would be really lovely if you, and I mean, I'm going to read it with as much love as I read these two books. But I definitely love to hear from Neha as well and from Shripa and Samira ma'am about like the connections. And do you see the connections, the contrast, the ways in which the books both speak to each other and kind of occupy different spaces? When we first thought of this session, we weren't very sure if it was the best idea. At least I wasn't very sure if it was the best idea to combine these two books. But while Loiter had been on our like reading list for a very long time, and we were celebrating this 1 year, so I also wanted to be able to celebrate the friendships. And together we thought that there was such a beautiful way in which the books um, speak to each other, and I'm so happy that our conversation till now has actually brought those synergies out as well as the ways in which they diverge. But I'd definitely love for you to hear from you on your experience of both working on both these books, how it diverged, the legacy of why Loiter, and like the conscious choice, like Samira ma'am said, of choosing to focus on the joy that friendships have brought you, at least in the recent times. So please, please do go ahead.
Actually, I have to say that in one sense, one hadn't really thought of them as continuums in any way until you put them together. So we'd actually be interested in hearing people's experiences of having read them together for a book club. We'd really, really like to hear the voices, other people's voices. So if people want to talk about, I mean, those of you who actually managed to read both of them, and I mean, I as someone who tries very hard to keep up with reading, I know how hard that is. But if any of you manage to read both, we'd really love to know what you all thought of reading them together.
Definitely, we've been discussing everything. Varsha already have a come on, please, Varsha, go ahead and do tell us.
Yeah. So for me, it was a continuum because uh, uh, even when women are loitering, they seek other women. And Yaari is like a celebration of female friendship. So I would say that without Yaari, loitering is not possible. And even for men, they hang out with other men. So to loiter, you need friends. And part of the tragedy is that when women get married, they lose their friends somehow. And they are supposed to, in Indian context, women make friends with their husbands' wives. Sorry, husbands' friends' wives. So the girls they grow up with, they kind of lose touch with, and it's only now that in the cities and we have so many means of communication that we are connecting, like we are connecting over our interests, which was possible perhaps when we were in college uh, or in school. So I think that women's friendship and showing that there's so many ways of women's friendships to exist, and also to talk openly about the loss of friendship is such a powerful thing, because we talk about an end of marriage, we talk about divorce or separation, and we don't talk about loss of friendship, and it is equally traumatic.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you so much, Rosha, for sharing that. I also like to add that for me personally, when I was choosing both these books in conversation with each other, there was like a common theme of resistance in my mind, because I felt like, the act of friendship, the conscious choice to continue female friendships in the face of everything that is telling us that, this is not normal, or this is out of the way, or you should prioritize your romantic slash, marital relationships. In very much the same way as I thought loitering was an act of resistance, which kind of breaks the mold of what you are expected to be in the public space. To me, friendship and continuing these friendships was also a way of resisting what one is expected to do in their personal lives. And in that sense, I thought that the books definitely did speak to each other in a very fond sort of connection, and in both ways very empowering. Whatever the takeaway was for any of us. But I definitely love to open this up now to everybody else. If you have any questions, if you want to say something to the authors of the books you've been reading, if you want to just gush over your favorite paragraphs, and if you're not comfortable, you can also put the messages in text, and I will read them out um, as questions to our panel. Okay, so who's going to begin? if you guys don't open up, I'm going to start calling out. At least the good thing about this is I can be a bully here. But no, I do know that Gauri had something to say, and Anvita, please go ahead.
I just wanted to ask Shilpa and Samira and Nitla and uh, yeah, about your methodology a little bit. If you could just give me, your little bit of insight into the methodology you put into place for Why Loiter, because it does seem to be almost like the book version of a thesis, and collaborative one at that, with lots of people from different backgrounds, especially the architectural bit. I mean, I'm a researcher myself, and I am not at all familiar with this entire area of research. So, a little bit about that, I would be happy to learn.
Samira, you want to start? You want me to start?
No, you start. Take off. Yeah.
Okay, so when we started this, it was a fairly large project. It was a 3-year project. We got more money than we had ever seen or imagined in our lives to do it. Yeah, it was a very comfortable project in that sense. And when we started it, we had a broad sense of what we were doing. And I was trained in social science methodology, in ethnography, in interviewing, in participant observation. Samira had training as a journalist. And actually, we met Shilpa along the way. We met Shilpa after the project had just begun. Literally, we met Shilpa in September of 2003, which is when we officially began the research. And we really developed what we were doing along the way. The biggest choice we made was to do a large number of neighborhoods instead of 2 neighborhoods in depth. Yeah, so we sacrificed some amount of depth to width.
Yeah.
So we did 14 different kinds of neighborhoods in the city. So we looked at for 14 neighborhoods instead of doing 2 in depth, which meant that we were spreading ourselves a bit thin. But we tried to do interviews, we tried to do histories of these neighborhoods, we tried to do focus group discussions, we would do walks with people. We didn't manage to map all of them, we managed to map a few. And there also, and you asked particularly about the mapping, we started out by mapping people. Then we realized this made no sense to map men and women, because we needed to map men and women who were stationary versus men and women who were moving. Yeah, because while there were moving women, there were very few stationary women. So we tried those maps, right? Because women walk on the streets, they don't stand. They very rarely stand. So when you just map men and women, it doesn't tell you as much as if you were to map the difference between those who are moving and those who are stationary. Then we began to map with the routes that men and women took differently. And I'm using the gender binary here, because in 2003, we were thinking very much in the gender binary. Yeah. I think the conversations about sort of looking at trans folk and looking much more at gender fluidity have come a little bit later than when we had begun this research. So we also then had we had our research assistants track where people moved. So for instance, in a business district called Nariman Point in Bombay, we had research assistants just follow people at at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, say when they went for lunch, and we found that men would walk, meander, stop at 2 or 3 places, whereas women were much more likely to go to one place. If they were alone, just pick up their food and go back. If they were with a group, then they would stand there in that one place, they would eat, and then they would go back. Yeah, so they would go from point A to point B and then back from point B to point A. They would meander very, very little. So we did these kinds of different mappings. We mapped around a park where, as you all may have read, we saw that there was a group hanging out in one corner, only to realize afterwards that there was a school nearby. Yeah, and there were mothers waiting for their school children to come out. They were not really, quote unquote, loitering in any sense. We also tried to do things like exhibitions. So we tried to get young people to do photography. We put up don't ask me what we didn't do. Yeah, we did workshops with people. We used that to feed into our data. I'm sure I'm forgetting that. So what we basically did was we evolved everything we did, we evolved into our methodology. So we kept expanding our methodology to include everything we were doing. And then of course we did quite a lot of ethnography in parks, in at railway stations. And then as we realized more and more middle class women were saying that they were hanging out in malls and coffee shops, we started to spend time in malls and coffee shops trying to do an ethnography there. Yeah, in fact, so much so that at one point our funder sent a note saying, "Why are there so many bills for barista?" So this kind of so we kept expanding what we were doing based on what we were hearing. We did the largest proportion of our interviews just traveling in trains. So we'd sit in the train and then take the train. Then we started taking the last train in the night to look at what that meant. Then of course at that end we would reach Virar station, for instance, at like 2 a.m. in the morning. So we had to take our poor office assistant with us because 3 women couldn't be alone over there, yeah? So our office assistant also came with us to hang out at Virar station. So basically we just kept expanding methodology to and then and then we wrote it up. Yeah, so we wrote it, and some of you may have read these the essays the three of us wrote in the Economic and Political Weekly in 2007. There were 3 essays. There were actually 5 essays that appeared because we curated that section, but the 3 of us each have an essay, which was the first official thing we put out about the first academic piece of work we put out about the book. And originally it was intended to be an academic book. In 2006, at the tail end of our project, we presented it to a bunch of 8 academics, urban planners, activists, journalists. And it was Samira, you see Samira's face as I'm talking. It was a disaster. Yeah, it was an unmitigated disaster.
And to the feminists, what about the feminists who tore us apart?
What is this loitering? And we were also not prepared to take on those questions. So we answered them very badly also. Yeah, so it's on us as well. And one scholar, I will not name, said, "Oh, you must read." And then she started naming basic texts in anthropology, basic texts in it was quite something. Yeah, it was, let's just say, it was extremely character building, that workshop that we did, because we had to listen to this during the day and then drink wine with them at night and be very nice. So
Because it
this
was
was
a residential workshop. I don't know
Yeah.
what possesses to have a residential workshop.
I have no idea. But after that, the 3 of us stayed on one more day with our friend Rahul Srivastav, who was at that time the director of Pukar, which is the organization under which we were doing this research. And we were near a beach. So 3 of us would walk on the beach feeling like horribly despondent and really like we had been squashed very badly, which we had been. And then we thought back to our research, and we realized that throughout, as we were presenting our work, the feminist activists and academics kept asking us, "But why would you want to loiter? Even good men don't loiter." But the people who had loved the idea of loitering throughout were the students in our undergrad, particularly our undergraduate workshops. Yeah, even as and those of you who remember the early 2000s will remember that it was not a time that where it was sexy to be a feminist. So a lot of our undergraduate students would start any statement by saying, "I am not a feminist, but," and then they would go on to say whatever they wanted, but they loved the idea of loitering. And so on that beach, in this very despondent stage, the idea of writing a general, accessible book from our research, not trying not to dilute our research in any way, but writing it in a style that was non-academic was born. And so this was 2006. When by the time we sent the final proof, I think it was 2009. Yeah, roughly. So that's that story. Samira, I'm sorry I spoke for very long.
No, that's lovely. Thank you. I'm sure everyone's
Thank
really
you so
happy
much,
to-
Shilpa. That was actually quite, revealing. And I was not actually aware that it was such a long period of, research and data collection. And I didn't know that it was, but it did seem so, because I mean, the findings in it are so the validity of it is self-evident, for someone who's reading it. It resonates like anything. So I mean, I could sense that a lot of effort has gone in behind it. Thank you so much, Shilpa.
Thank you. Um, Zena also has a question to ask. Maybe Zena, you can go ahead and then I can read a couple of
Yeah,
questions.
I think I had a question for Neha, but she left. But I'll open it in general. What were the challenges that I think you faced when you started Loiter movement? Because it mustn't be easy, like you were saying, like just for the book as well, it wasn't easy. So when the movement started, there must be like big challenges that were faced or police that were. So I'm just interested in what kind of resistance that you faced, and has it become easier now, 10 years later?
That actually adds to the question that's also in the text. Also, I'll just read it out, which says, the person looking back at Loiter, what are the sort of changes that you see in how loitering is perceived from then to now? And also, could you suggest some things that can be done to improve the situation as a male in order to be seen as an ally? So this is one of our male members who's asking the question. So perhaps you could take both the questions together.
Okay, just to answer Zena's question, actually, you're right. Neha is the right person to answer because Neha initiated the movement. But one of the things we were asked a lot by the time the book came out is, how do you plan to operationalize, loitering? How are you going to now put in action? Now, first of all, good enough, you do the research, you put all the ideas, and then expect you to do all the work for it to operationalize. We had contemplated doing it with women's group. We had contemplated something which Neha is doing actually, but in a little different way. But I think we were exhausted on the process of the whole, the one almost a decade going, where we were researching it, writing academic papers, writing the book, writing the report for our funders, and we just said, like, okay, we're going to take our time. Let's start thinking through this. But happily for us, Neha's thing happened, and so what Neha, eventually just messaged us on Facebook, and she didn't know us at all, and she said that, for the past 3 months I've been doing this. I read your book, it transformed my life, and I sat in a park and I read a book. And then next week, another friend joined me. And now we sit in parks and read books, we play a game, we just wander around, walk. And we figured that's the message of the book. If there are more women in public space looks different, it feels different. We just need to be there, more bodies, actually. And she said, maybe I'm getting it wrong. And in fact, Neha later said, I thought later, oh my God, maybe this wasn't the idea of the authors. He said, no, this was exactly the idea of the authors. This is one perfect. And, we got in touch. We said, please go ahead. And once, your work is in public domains for the public to interpret it and take it forward, she got the ideas right. We didn't see there was a problem. We should run with it the way you think fit, in that sense. So it was about claiming public space for your own and claiming it for no purpose, for pleasure, for whatever gives you pleasure. And I think, Neha's really managed to keep the energy going and got a lot of people in Bombay, the other groups in some other cities as well. But I have to say, Neha is really the strength of that of that movement still. So now we run the Facebook page with her and other things with her. But I wish she was here to talk more about it. But sorry, then you asked something related to, okay. Is it becoming easy? I don't think she faced resistance. I think she faced people who were perplexed. They didn't know what she was doing and what she wanted to do. I don't think it was resistance. I mean, she goes, like a lot of people asking me, should we are coming for your movement, but should we have a t-shirt with a message on it? Should I carry a banner? Should we have slogans, songs of resistance to sing? And she said, no, just come, just be. You have to just be in public. You just want a woman to be in more numbers, having fun, standing in Nukkad, having chai, whatever. So what's happening? We're changing the look of the appearance of what public space is supposed to look like. It's not looking messy. And suddenly, with a group of 6 women sitting at tapri and drinking chai, we think, kuch galat, something is wrong. So once I think she decided tapri and read paper, newspapers near our house and drank chai. And then something, aap yahan kyun baith rahi hai? Why are you here? I mean, so it's like you're upsetting something, but they're not sure what you're upsetting. One or two of you. Then suddenly there's a big group of you. So I think it's like, upsetting an apple cart and doing it, gently pushing and sitting in a public park and asking why is the park closed at this time? Why can't people come? Pushing that, why can't parks be open all the time? Why can't people sit on the grass? Why can't people do this and that? And I think they've pushed it where people were first so perplexed and then quite delighted. And a lot of women got very delighted. If you're going, I can go. Then fact like accessing a municipal park. Most people were accessing municipal park in your neighborhood. You kept saying, okay, that park mostly is closed. There's some old watchman. Nobody seems to go in there. and then insisting it's open and we can go in, we can take a chakkar, we can sit down, we can all sit down together. And, so just that the fact that we don't use our local parks, we don't use facilities available to us even free, or play a game of football there, or whatever. So I think there was not so much resistance, but it was just people were just confused why you would choose, and why would you choose to do it? Why would good women choose to do that? But when I join them in loitering, and every time I ask people, what have you gained by this experience? Everybody says it's totally has transformed. Even just one loitering session or two, it seems very simple. You go out there, you walk around, sometimes a group, sometimes alone, and you do something. But what does it do? It transforms our relationship with public space. We have not looked at the municipal parks around. We have not looked at the public spaces. If we don't use them, they will tomorrow get privatized. They will disappear. And I won't even fight for it because I didn't even use it. So when I start, I become a different citizen. I become more civic-minded. Lots of questions arise into me. Why is this closed? Why is this open? Why are these facilities not available to me? Where are the toilets on the street? So lots of other questions arise. You actually become a very engaged citizen of the street, or public space. So a lot of people said it actually changes the ideas of that. And I think it definitely becomes, a lot of people are more keen to join in, but I don't think there's been resistance to the movement as such in that sense. At least in Bombay it hasn't been, but maybe I think smaller cities possibly. Shilpa, I don't know.
Well, so there's another question. Thank you so much for that answer. But like a lot of people are interested in thinking a then and now sort of comparison. Do you see that this sort of perspective on what loitering is and what women's right to space in a city is, do you think it has changed in the years that the book has been published?
So one is that, the fact that the Why Loiter continues to be a popular text is actually to do with it very little has changed in some ways. In some ways, very little. Women's claim to public space is not an accepted thing. I think more women are speaking up. A text like Why Loiter and others gives you more, like a weapon to speak up more. But in the fact that every time our book gets more popular, it's actually when an act of violence takes place in the city, everybody says, we want to read texts about women, public space, whatever, they need to Why Loiter. So often there are so many, so the violence hasn't decreased, the thing, but I just see a lot of people talk about public space in a certain way with understanding of, and our text, of course, took the axis of gender, knowing that there are many other axes you need to look at public space: disability, seniority, queerness, all kinds of ways you need to be hinted on that in the book, not enough in depth, but we have talked about them. But we've said that many other axes you need to look at how people access city, not just only the frame of gender, but you need to look at so many other areas. But so I think in some ways you think things have not changed, like there's no really, women still don't have a full claim to public space. There's still a lot of violence and this thing. But in some ways, a lot of younger women are changing it because they are speaking up and they're talking about it. It's mentioned. Suddenly a television news anchor will drop the term loitering, very casually, like an acceptable term, and why are women not accepted? So sometimes you've seen the questioning change. Suddenly you say, oh my God, the television news anchor asked the question as if it was understood that women had a right to public space. But when we were doing the research, it wasn't understood as right. So sometimes so casually done, you say, and they're using so casually words which we were decried for in that workshop. I mean, particularly for the word loitering. I can't tell you how we were running down that can't use a horrible word like loitering. And
I was actually very interested in figuring out how did you coin like loitering or like choose loitering as the word that best describes the act that you talk about. Right? Like of course in Hindi there is ghumna, masti karna, like there's gedi marna in Punjabi, but like loitering and the way you describe it is also very specific term. And I wanted to understand if there was any debate between like the authors about what word best describes the act that you're talking about.
Shilpa, you want to take that?
So the word loitering actually comes from colonial laws, British, French, Dutch colonial laws, which are largely anti-vagrancy laws.
Yes.
So many post-colonial countries that had British, French, Dutch governments have laws that are in this broad frame of anti-vagrancy laws, and many of them flag loitering. In 2008, we did an artist residency as part of something called the International Symposium on Electronic Arts in Singapore, and we found that Singapore had a very, very similar anti-loitering law. So what we began to think about really was the occupation of public space as citizens. And it seemed almost natural because these anti-vagrancy laws were framed in a way that strips you of your citizenship, right? It takes away your right to belong. It looks at people on the streets suspiciously. And in fact, we found that even those people who were loitering on the streets, largely lower class men, were, even though they could loiter, they were always looked upon suspiciously. They were never welcome there. They never really belonged. So we realized that even as women were unbelongers, so were very, very many other categories of people. And so that's what really took us to, so how would you then claim the street? And if we wanted to claim the street for women, then it had to be a much, much larger enterprise. If it had to be an unconditional claiming based on citizenship. And it seemed that this kind of almost debased, reviled activity framed a kind of citizenship claim. It framed a descent to neoliberalism, because in neoliberalism, you're not supposed to hang out on the streets. You're supposed to be productive, or you're supposed to be in mass rapid transport. You're not supposed to be doing nothing. And so, in a sense, it encapsulated for us that claim. I also wanted to add to what Samira is saying, and I completely agree with what she's saying, that there is a certain change in the language, particularly a feminist language of claiming, but one of the things that has changed in 2024 versus between 2003 and 2006, when we were doing our research, is that in fact public space for everybody has shrunk even more, and it is policed even more, and it is surveilled even more. And sometimes it is surveilled in the name of safety, and it doesn't work. It actually works to keep people away. So in the 1990s, when I was in college, we would walk on Marine Drive all night. If you missed the last train home from college, and I went to college, South Bombay, a group of us would walk all night on Marine Drive. Today, by about 1:30 a.m., the police will kick you off Marine Drive because they think it's not safe. But it was safe because there was us and there were many other people doing the same thing. They were on Marine Drive all night. Parks, where we did a lot of our ethnographic research, would open. They would close. Many of them would close in the evening, but they would open at whatever 6, 7 a.m. in the morning and not close until 7, 8 at night. Now, many parks close in the afternoon. And that also is this kind of, it's framed in terms of anti-vandalism. So they think that the poor will come in and do what? I have no idea. Yeah. So there is a lot of shrinking of public space, and there's a language of surveillance which now masquerades as for women's own good. So even as within a feminist frame, there is a language and people are talking about it. And Samira is absolutely right. People will throw the word loitering in casually, which is amazing for us. At the same time, there is a lot of shrinking of public space. So we would do a very, very different. And I think that those who are researching the public, and the other amazing thing is that there is so much amazing research on gender and public space now. In South Asia, particularly, there was nothing when we began. So that's amazing as well. And I think that they are finding quite different things in terms of what public space itself looks like.
Thank you so much. That is such a beautiful response. I think I'm very conscious of the time. I wouldn't want you to have to spend more time with us. Although I would love to keep you there for as long, but I'd love to wrap with one last question to all the authors, both for Yaari and for Loiter. Just if you could wrap up your writing process, your thinking process, your research process in the emotion that was driving you most when you were doing this. Was loitering coming from an act of, say, anger or resistance or fighting? Was it coming from a place of joy, wanting to claim space, an assertion? I don't know. I just wanted to understand for you personally, how did writing these books impact you, and what were the emotions that drove you? I would really love to know if you could take a minute to tell us. Any of you can start.
I think they came both from, I think loitering the word, from both joy and pleasure in public space. Definitely that was a big part of it. but also resistance. I think it was a way, and I didn't particularly when people pushed us and said, why loitering terrible? But I think we were all the more, I think this is the right word. I mean, this is really the right word. The more they're resisting, and again, so, like I remember some feminists telling us, but when we're already fighting so much about violence and women in a public space, how can you talk about pleasure? And then in our mind, it was very clear that violence and pleasure are two sides of the same coin. You have to talk. We were saying the struggle against violence continues. It doesn't mean that that struggle goes away. But also, that we can also have pleasure in this place where we want violence to go away from here, but pleasure to remain. So, and I think so it became like, they kept saying, this word, just make it a little more, something respectable about it. Don't use the word loitering, but something more respectable about it. But we thought, no, the idea is to push the envelope, and it is whatever you take it. And we're not even reforming the act of loitering. We're just saying that, pleasure, joy, but also resistance. We're resisting the fact that why are you so resistant of a woman's body having in pleasure and in public? I mean, it's like you're getting so panicky about it. And I think because we also had some of these discussions with, I think feminists, I'm going to say that it really pushed us more that, my God, there's so much more to push even in the movement in feminism itself. It's not that they're all well-meaning, maybe they have good ideas, but why is this resistance to using that word? So I think that was what has it changed in our lives? In my life, I don't know. I just know it made my one teenage and one non-teenage daughter very stubborn, telling me every time saying that, but I don't think it's a good idea. What do you mean? I can't believe you're the co-author of Why Loiter. I mean, seriously. I mean, so I think what we had not conceived of, that our own kids are going to turn it on us. And we said, yeah, that's true. You're the co-author of Why Loiter. Jao, go forward and you march ahead. But what about I want to play mom and I want to play parent and sort of, like I want to say, but do you think? I can't say. So I have to say, I realized that while by laying out this kind of, my elder daughter had just been born literally a year before While Loiter took off. She's already grown up with While Loiter. So I was like, what do you mean? Yeah, While Loiter. The message you're supposed to do this. I said, okay. Apne pair pe kolhadi marna is like what you thought. But it's like so. So I think it's just what I find very amazing is how our readers have run with the idea and how they keep pushing it further and further in ways I can't even conceive, and not just readers but also other researchers and whatever, how they conceive of it. For example, this researcher who used our research to look at loitering online. For my research, look at women loitering online spaces. But she extended the idea in totally different dimensions, which you never thought. So I think it's just wonderful how people take an idea and things to them and run with it, and then sort of run in different directions and just expand it. And I think that builds a whole collaborative, wonderful community. And it's that I think is the most marvelous part for me.
Thank you so much. Thank you. And yeah, we're all part of that community already. All of us are like, I believe so of like, I mean, I wouldn't want to start. I don't want to hear from Shilpa and Nisla as well, but thank you so much for writing what you did, because it has moved all of us in immeasurable ways. Like, I mean, and that is probably the power of this writing that has stayed with us. Like, we're discussing it so many years from when it was first written, but it resonates so deeply to our lived experiences even today. So thank you for your words. But yeah, please, the other authors also, if you can just take a minute to tell us.
Okay, I'll be very, very, very brief. I concur with everything that Samira said. And I want to say that for me, both books, both writing Why Loiter and editing Yaari, were just simply joyous in terms of, and I'm talking quite differently from Samira, just the process. When we wrote Why Loiter, in fact, in the time that we substantively wrote it between 2007 and 2000, the first draft we finished by 2008. Samira's second daughter had literally just been born. So we would sit in Samira's house at Samira's desk, all three of us using, one of us had the mouse, the other one had the, and her younger daughter would be in this kind of bouncy chair at the side, and her older daughter knew not to come in, but her younger daughter was always around with us. So we wrote it in that, and then Shilpa and I would leave Samira's house, and we always stopped at this place called Idli House. So we would go and eat idlis. So for me, that the process of writing was just pure joy of trying to think together and write together. And writing, as those of you who write know, it's a struggle. It's hard to write, and it's full of self-doubt, and it's full of anxiety. So writing together was just, it was heavenly at some level. And so also editing Yaari with Nethila, and as we've said elsewhere, we straddled many roles. We started off when I taught Nethila, and then we became we worked together, and now we are colleagues and friends. And just being able to read those essays together and to scream over them and to sort of send them back and forth, it's writing and research is a lonely process, and collaboration just makes it, I don't know, it elevates it. And sometimes I wonder why I write anything alone at all. So yeah, that's my
Thank
input.
you so much, ma'am. Thank you so much. That is so beautiful. But Shanti and Mithila, if you would like to also add something, that would be lovely.
Shanti, would you like to go first?
No, go ahead.
For me, I think the overwhelming sort of emotion was that of gratitude. I had during the pandemic sort of realized how much my friends were sort of supporting me and holding me up. So a lot of it was gratitude, and the other sort of overwhelming emotion was that of the possibilities of reimagining a world where it's a cis het family is not at the center of your life, where there are so many other relationships, and I think all of us are already doing it. But to be able to have a solid thing around which you can come together, a book where you could read about other people's experiences and how they were centering friendships. For me, that was really what kept me motivated and what gave me a lot of joy. I mean, I agree absolutely with Shilpa. I'm a very nervous, anxious writer, but working on this book has just given me so much joy and so much community that I'll forever be grateful for.
Thank you. Thank you so much. That is so sweet and very, very uplifting in a way, like motivating me to also think about how we can make the writing process more joyous. And like to see that that has happened for you is kind of inspirational. It is lovely to think that there is a way in which this very painstaking process can become so beautiful. And I think that's the epitome of friendship as well that the book discusses. Shravati, would you like to add something?
Yeah, I mean, I've just written one essay in the book, so it's not quite the same. But I wrote about Bollywood and friendship, and these are like things I really enjoy. I'm a big, big, big Bollywood buff, and like it's something I think about constantly at any point in the day. So it was for me, I'd actually sent some 3 pitches, and they picked this because they wanted, I think, something fun, like something with levity. And I'm so glad that came around like that because I had a lot of fun writing it. And I think people have told me they're having fun reading it. So yeah, it's my biggest emotion is just like fun. It was maza. Yeah.
Thank you so much. On that very lovely note, I think I know that like so many people have so many things to say, but it's so like it's so beautiful. I think the only feeling I have right now is the same joy and the same fun that you're talking about. And I'm really grateful to you for having joined us, to all the members who have stayed for like a session that has gone way past its intended time. My gratitude to the authors, to the members, and to the writers, to everybody who has joined us. I will be putting hopefully a YouTube the version of this chat somewhere. But thank you once again for joining us. And if there are more questions, and I'm sure I will definitely I will definitely collate them and send them your way, ma'am. So yes. Thank you once again. I will now be closing the session. If anyone else has anything else to say before we end, say now or hold your silence. Okay, thank you so much, man. Thank you. And
Thank you. Thank you for inviting us.
so
It was
much.
really
Thank you very
lovely.
much. Yeah, very nice.
Thank you so very much.
enjoyed as well. I mean, I know we had so much more to say in the first hour, but I was a little conscious of like kind of, having you sit through a conversation, and I was wondering if, you might think this is too much. But we spoke so much about it in the first hour as well, all these personal stories. And it's so yeah, this is not just about reading, it's about life for so many of us. So thank you. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. It's such a joy. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye. Bye. See you all. Bye.